Welcome back to Tied Up with the Morgans. Today we are here at my parents' house, and I wanted to go over what I think is by far one of the most aggressive invasives that I've come across. Oriental Bittersweet. Let's take a look. We're going to talk about why it's so destructive. We're going to give a little background on it, and what you can do, how to identify it, and so we'll dive into that a little bit. Today's video is going to be just on that species alone. I'd like to do a lot of these, especially on native species, but this was one today. I was here working at my dad's and I came across a really big vine, and we really don't have a lot of this on the property. This is maybe ground zero on the property, as far as I know. Well, yeah, as far as I know. And I'd like to dive into it, talk about it, and maybe warn you of it. So let's get into it. So there is this dead tree right here. You can see it has been dead for a very long time. It used to be much bigger, and it's kind of just fallen over time. I don't even remember what tree species that was. I was just a kid, I think, when it died. But anyways, let's zoom in a bit. You see this. All of that is Oriental Bittersweet. Oriental Bittersweet was first introduced to the United States in the 1860s. It is, if it were native, it would be prettier, but it is a very cool looking plant, and that's kind of the appeal of it, is people like, wow, we can climb up, all of these different things, climb on my fence or wherever they would want it. And also it makes good wreaths. People would use it to make wreaths out of these, especially because it gets very vibrant orange berries in the fall that I will admit they are pretty, but it doesn't benefit our native ecosystem. And those seeds, even if they're 10 years old, they could still germinate. Even if they're very dried out, it doesn't matter. They can still germinate. And so you make a wreath, you toss it, maybe it ends up somewhere else. Maybe you give the wreath to somebody, maybe it ends up in a compost pile, who knows? But those seeds will start to germinate and start to grow. Here is a small young one. It has alternate leaves. It can be glossy, and it will have a little, I guess you'd call it like fine tooth edges here. When it's young like this, it can tolerate shade, but it likes sunlight, so it's going to climb for that sunlight, and it can grow well over 10 feet in a year, and in its lifetime, it can grow well over 60 feet tall. I've seen it close to 60 feet, if not 60 feet, on a couple of occasions, and it can even get to be 10 inches in diameter. So right now, this is growing under, actually this whole area right here we go, is in shade. Very little sunlight in this area, but you can see how it's climbing. Like right there, it looks almost like a snake. And it is choking out all of these. Just take a look. There's also some Virginia creeper here fighting, but here's a Virginia creeper here with the 5 leaves. And they have a more defined edge, whereas this is not as defined. The teeth here on the edges. But you can see everywhere here, I don't know. So I don't think you could hear me very well. There was a helicopter going over, but you can see how this climbs, and it will choke out the native species. It'll take over the canopy, so then the native species won't get the sunlight they need, and it'll have all that extra added weight. It'll be choking it out. It is just nasty. The stems here, when they're young, like on this, are just green. But you'll see as they get a little older, they start to get a little more light colored. And in here, this is about, it doesn't change after this point, the color. It just stays this light brown, I guess you would call it, kind of like a gray. And this is really amazing here. Is just how it looks just like a rope. It's perfect. It really is. It's pretty amazing. So this was where I found it today, and I had cut it. I'll go over that in a little bit, but this one is pretty old. You can see the bark on this. See, compared to my shoe there, it's pretty big. And all around in here, it just wants to climb. The light green leaves, when it's young, it's a lot lighter colored. And they really stand out when you're looking around here, right? So, you know, none of this, and then you got this light colored. So that really stands out when it's young. So it's bad for a number of reasons I've already discussed, but one, it also girdle the trees. It's gonna kill the trees, shrubs, a lot of the native plants. The other thing is it provides little benefit to, obviously to our plants, but little benefit to our insects. Nothing wants to feed on it. And in fact, on this one, I saw a whole lot of spotted lanternfly nymphs. So things like that. I know the spotted lanternfly loves Tree of Heaven because they're both from the same part of the world. So then it comes here and it sees things like Tree of Heaven, Oriental Bittersweet, and it's like, hey, this is what I know. And so that's the other thing, is that plants like this are a perfect food source for invasive insects. So I mentioned that it can grow from seed, and it does. Also, its root system can be massive. The root system goes so far, and it'll just keep sending up shoots everywhere it goes. So that is very destructive. So you're not only fighting seed when it does go to seed, and each plant produces a lot of seed as well, but you're going to be fighting the roots. Whenever it's young, like these light green colored ones I showed you, you can pull the whole thing up. So if you don't have a big property, or maybe you do and you just come across some young ones, you can rip the whole thing out, and that is the best treatment there, is to remove the whole root system. But with something like these very thick ones, we're not going to pull that up. We're going to damage a whole lot of other plants by ripping those out of the ground. So that is not the way to treat it. I'll give you a couple ways you can treat it. So this spot in particular, where it has some pretty old vines, it's been on this tree for, I would imagine, a few years. All of the leaves I want to spray are up top, and I'm not going to spray those because they're very high up. So in this case, I would do a window cut. A window cut is where you cut at ground level, you cut the vine at ground level, and again at eye level. That way, if I'm working off of this tree here, I can see all of the vines, make sure I got all of them. And here, I did just that. So I cut this one at ground level and eye level. This is a maple, but the vines I will cut eye level and ground level. Did that on this one as well. You can see it's no longer attached. Same thing here. So I did that all around. Now I can see I haven't missed any. Maybe there's some tiny ones I still have to get to. But for the window cut, just a big window, right? Ground and eye level. After applying a window cut, the plant is going to come back with a vengeance. But that is when you can then treat those leaves. You can treat them with the herbicide, and it will send that down into the roots, and you'll have better luck killing it that way. Whereas right now, everything up top is going to die off because it's no longer connected to a root system. So it's just leaves up in the canopy of the tree. If you're wondering, the kids here are just sword fighting, nothing to worry about. I also want to say I'm not an expert on invasive species removal. There are people a lot smarter than me who are experts. I suggest reading into it, and a great resource that I use often is the Penn State Extension. They have a lot of fact sheets for invasive species in the Pennsylvania area. I can't speak for everywhere, but I know they have a great fact sheet on Oriental Bittersweet, and you can even print them out. So I like to do that. I keep a little folder of them. It's just easier to reference. I like a hard copy better than digital, but it's all online as well, so whatever works for you. But check there, and then we'll tell you all of the different treatment options. I'm sure I'm going to miss a couple, so read into it if you have this or whatever the invasive species is. There's a lot of good resources out there. Like I said, there's people smarter than me that do this every day. This is their full-time job on trying to get rid of these invasive, or I should even say trying to manage these invasive species. So take a look into that. But anyways, the window cut, and then you would treat any new regrowth, treat those as they shoot up, because they will come back quick. And you'll see it's that light green color, really stands out compared to everything else. So if you just have some small Oriental Bittersweet, pull the whole roots up, get rid of it. If you have something like this that's pretty big, window cut, wait for new growth, treat the new growth. Do not pull these vines down. It may be tempting, you know, I mean, especially when I was a kid, you'd always want to just pull on stuff, right? Don't do that. I'm sure you all are aware of that and know enough, but if you don't, the reason is, especially on a tree like this that's dead, even if it's not dead, you pull on that, those vines are very heavy. They've been up there for who knows how long. You have no idea what you're going to be pulling down on top of yourself. Even the vine itself would really hurt you. So do not just start yanking on the vines. And even if nothing did hit you, you're just going to damage the tree, the host tree that it's on, right? The tree it's taken over. Whereas in this case, it's a dead tree. But a lot of it is not dead, a lot of these other trees around it. So you're just going to cause harm to the plant and possibly to yourself. So don't go pulling it down. It may be tempting, but don't do it. The next treatment option would be a basal bark treatment. A basal bark treatment, I haven't used it myself. I need to, because it's ideal for woody invasives, and we have a lot of woody invasives. So pretty much a basal bark treatment is just a herbicide with like some oil base as well. So you mix the two. A lot of people use like diesel fuel, and that will then transfer, or I should say a better word would be penetrate the bark. So that's nice because you don't have to do all the cutting, whether it's Oriental Bittersweet, privet, honeysuckle, a lot of the invasive woody species. You can just spray towards the base of the plant, the trunk, the vine, whatever it is. You spray that woody part of it, and diesel fuel will help penetrate it with the herbicide. So that herbicide will then get inside and kill that plant. So basal bark, I believe you can do year round. I've read some conflicting information on, depends on sap flow, but I believe the Penn State Extension says basal bark can be done year round, and they know more than a lot of us, so I would go off of that. So some things to keep in mind. If you identify Oriental Bittersweet on your property, I would take it very serious, because if you don't, 5-10 years from now, it will look very different. It will take over, and it is very aggressive, and the land needs to be managed. Now you know what to look for, so do keep an eye out for it. Take it serious. Again, I'm not a professional. These are things I've learned over a few years of being into this stuff, and especially working here on the property. We have a lot of invasive species that need managed, and it's definitely not a perfect system I have, but I am working on it. We are working on it. So I am not an expert, but there's a lot of great information out there. Like I said, Penn State Extension has a lot of great information on this. I highly suggest it. And also reaching out to, you know, your local extension office. They can help a lot. Forestry departments, whoever. There's a lot of great state and local resources that can help you on these projects. And do take it serious, because these landscapes need managed. They've always been managed, and they need managed. So take it seriously. It really matters. If you don't, you're not going to recognize it 10, 15 years from now. And I know for me, I grew up playing in these same woods that my kids are now playing in, and I want them to grow up seeing all of the different insects, the birds, the mammals, everything that's out there, and even more, things that maybe have gone away because the ecosystem's changing. I want them to enjoy it all just as I did, and maybe even better. So that's what we want to do. We want to make it better and manage it. So there's a lot to this. It's overwhelming for sure. Trust me, I feel overwhelmed a lot with the amount of invasive species here on the property, but we do what we can and raise awareness to it. And that's what I'm trying to do in this video, at least, is just to help you identify Oriental Bittersweet if you have it. I'm going to do a lot more of these. I really want to focus more on the native species because showing you what's worth protecting, what's worth saving, right? But I think that's all we got for today. So we are going to do some of these, probably just the biggest invasive species we have here on the property we'll go over. So we'll do that. And we're really going to do some deep dives on the native species because they support so much life. They're beautiful and we love them. So thanks for watching, guys. I think that's all. Let me know what you think, and we'll see you in the next video. 1 month after cutting the Oriental Bittersweet, all of this brown. And so when I cut this, I forgot to tell my dad, and he called me. He's like, hey, did you kill something? He's like, I got a whole bunch of dead stuff. Because you really can't see it until it's gone. It just kind of all blends in unless you are looking really close. And he happened to notice that there was a whole bunch of dead vines. And that's the Oriental Bittersweet that we cut. So we cut it off of this dead tree as well as some young maples. And then over here, it was climbing a cherry and some walnuts. But yeah, that's it. We're going to now treat any new growth with a foliar application. That way we will kill it and the roots, hopefully.